Welcome to my first video on F1 24 exclusive early access. Before we start, I want to say a big thank you to EA and the Creator Network for supplying a code to let me play the game ahead of time. This video is going to be a comparison between F1 23 and F1 24, and we're going to go for a one-to-one direct comparison showing off drivability, cars, sounds, circuits of course, which are the main thing of this video. There's 4 circuits which have changed in this year's game: Spa, Jeddah, Qatar and Silverstone. All 4 of those are going to be compared directly in this video. I want to note every single lap in this video was made on a default setup. I only changed brake bias and differential. Also, the sound mix is set to driver on F1 23 and broadcast on 24 because driver on 24 doesn't work that well for me at the moment. The final thing to note, you're going to have timestamps down below guys for the entire video. The first 8 to 10 minutes is going to be me commentating the laps, and then also the end of the video is going to be entirely raw gameplay sound. With that said, like the video guys and subscribe for more F1 24 exclusive access. Another video dropping tomorrow, and let's get into it. So as mentioned, I'm not going to focus on sounds while I'm commentating. You guys can check that out afterwards. Either way, here we have Jeddah starting off the kind of 4 laps in this video. We have Red Bull gameplay. I tried to get my camera settings as close as possible. I've synced both laps running across the start finish line at the same time, and you guys can kind of compare what's happening. Now, I want to basically talk throughout this my impression so far of the game and the handling. So I want to note I haven't done a single race lap yet. I also haven't touched career mode. All I've been doing is time trial, and a lot of it because I'm trying to understand how the game works. For now, I'll say this game is a massive adjustment, and something that stands out to me in the handling, this reminds me of F1 2011, which there seems to be a bit of a meta already starting to appear, where basically you have to be very aggressive with the steering. Some people referring to it as soaring at the wheel. I'm going to just say lock-to-lock rotation, and basically that gives you good turning. Compared to 23, there is a lot more traction, the back end is super planted, and generally it's hard to lose. Only in very low speed corners, you can struggle. And when those low speed corners arrive, the traction is an issue because there's not great feedback. Like, you can't feel the car that well, in my opinion. I struggle to know when I'm doing the right thing or the wrong thing, if I'm in a gear too high, a gear too low, if I'm putting too much throttle on or not enough. It's really hard to find the balance. Now, one thing that's consistent throughout these laps you're going to see is 23 is faster. Now, I mentioned setup is the same. However, we're still trying to figure out the meta of the 24 game and how to drive fast. And that is kind of, we'll see over time where that takes us. Either way, Jeddah done, the track is basically the same, but all the external elements have changed. One thing that is interesting for me in this game, and this affects every single track I've driven so far, the curbs. You can drive over every single curb. You can bonk, bash, smash every single curb, and it's pretty much drivable. You're not going to have any trouble with them in this game. To the point where it's a bit of a shame there is no actual curb punishment per se, but it does mean on certain tracks where curbs were unrealistic in the past, where you couldn't get on them, and in real life they do, now you can, and you can really kind of lean on them and basically drive on them as if they were regular tarmac. Especially here at Silverstone, you lead on the curbs a lot. Same goes for Spa, which we'll see in a little bit. But besides that, the main thing, the key takeaway on handling for me in this game is a car that is very, very heavy on the nose. Now, to me, this isn't my style of driving. I don't generally like oversteer, and I don't like pointy cars. But this is a very extreme game for it. I find it reminds me a little bit, like I said, of F1 2011 with lock-to-lock steering and very sharp, quick inputs. And it also reminds me of arcade games, like Need for Speed. If you're playing on a pad, where you have that kind of very sharp initial response time. Here we are at Spa, another track where the low speed is very tricky. The bus stop and turn 1, the inside curbs, when you take them, they just want to hook you round and basically force you into a spin. It's very interesting, and again, you have to do laps to understand what I'm trying to explain, and it's going to take some getting used to. Either way, you get to really appreciate the changes to this track in particular. And I can say it's very nice to drive a Spa which is up to date, up to scratch, with all the nice details in place. It really does make for a completely different driving experience. Now, other things I picked up in this one, I felt quite a bit of mid-corner to kind of late-end understeer. So there's a very sharp response and the car's on the nose, but then you'll find there is some kind of wash if you don't scrub off some speed. And you have to kind of play around with those limits. If you watch my inputs, I'm constantly kind of like jittering on the steering wheel on 24, trying to turn the wheel into the corner and find the front end to bite. Whereas in 23, I'm much more consistent. The wheel's much more stable. It's kind of just one motion where I turn in and then turn out. Whereas 24 is a lot more kind of, you know, in, out, adjust, trying to find that bite point on the tires and the front end. I haven't driven setups. Again, I'm trying to understand what the baseline is for this game and kind of comparing it to 23. And I feel like overall, my summary is a sharp front end with lots of curb aggression, really good traction, but a bit of a blurriness in low speed. I would say overall that is going to be my initial thoughts. I don't personally like it that much, I'll be honest. I would like to see some adjustments made, some pretty big adjustments made to the handling for my personal preference. I think 22 everyone hated. I think we'll end up looking back at 23 and realizing it was actually a really good game with incredible handling, because this to me feels like a bit of a step back. But it feels nothing like 22. This feels like something I've never driven before. It's a very unique handling system and I can't quite articulate what it's like. We're now at Qatar, another track where curbs are everywhere and you can basically launch them and, you know, be really aggressive. This is one of the few tracks where I exploited the meta of the aggressive wheel input and the kind of aggressive turning, and I was actually quicker here compared to the other 3 laps because I know how to go fast, but it feels wrong and it doesn't look very good because it looks ugly, kind of being super aggressive and sawing at the wheel, as many like to call it. But alas, if that's the way the game has to be played, that's the way the game has to be played. And I'm sure you guys have played the beta, a lot of you, so you'll know exactly what I'm referring to, and apparently there isn't a ton of change. So this is more or less what we're getting. I mean, these corners here, the triple rights, and this one is flat out. It's all flat in the new game. It's all flat. I don't know how, but it is. You just have to be very aggressive with your wheel inputs. So those are my thoughts. I want to hear you guys in the comments if you have played it. I'm now going to basically run all of these laps back with engine sound and also off-board. So enjoy, like and subscribe. I'll see you soon.
Wow.